The U.S. is planning for a long-term division of Gaza into a green zone, which will be under Israeli and international military control, where reconstruction would start, meaning where it would be allowed, and a red zone to be left in ruins. Here's the map, and it basically has shrunken the amount of Gaza that actual Gazans, Palestinians can live in without being under full Israeli control by an immense amount. You know, it's cut Gaza in half, but it's actually not half. It's 58% Israeli controlled now. And as you can see on the map, the green area is where Israel and the U.S. would begin to quote unquote rebuild Gaza. And as we know from Trump's statements, images they've put out, whole plans they've put out, he plans in the U.S.-led reconstruction to own part of Gaza and to turn it into basically Dubai. And guess who wouldn't really be there much? Gazans, Palestinians. Essentially, the entire population has already been moved out of this green area, out of that 58% of Gaza, into the red area. The red areas on this map of Gaza, like the dark red, is immense amounts of rubble. The lighter red is just light amounts of rubble. But basically, the entirety of Gaza is rubble. And as you know or can guess, Gazans and Palestinians can't rebuild, both because they don't have the money, they don't have the materials. Israel won't allow the materials in for rebuilding. But then, perhaps most importantly, if they rebuild something, Israel will likely bomb it eventually, maybe not for a year. Maybe they'll let that building stand for a year. Foreign forces will initially deploy alongside Israeli soldiers in the east of Gaza, the green zone, leaving the devastated strip divided by the current Israeli-controlled yellow line, according to U.S. military planning documents seen by The Guardian and sources briefed on American plans. These are internal military documents, which makes this seem more true than just Trump saying something. As is covered in this article, the U.S., Trump's administration has repeatedly said that all these other countries are going to help, quite likely, like the UK or something. But then other ones like Jordan has continually said they have no interest in helping. They have no interest in being part of this. They're not going to send troops on the ground in Gaza. It seems highly unlikely. So some of it, many people believe, is just Trump's wishful thinking in terms of which countries are going to actually be involved in this. The U.S. military plans raise serious questions about Washington's commitment to turning the ceasefire announced last month into an enduring political settlement with Palestinian rule across Gaza. If you believed, honestly, that Trump and Israel were going to allow Palestinian rule, of course they're not going to allow Palestinian rule. This is a fucking genocide. Come on. Who honestly believes that, we just want peace and then we're going to let them rule themselves? Considering this entire genocide from day one was manufactured by Israel because they wanted to take over a lot of Gaza, to have access to Gaza's oil off in the ocean there. And of course, many have pointed out that this so-called ceasefire, some, are saying it's not a ceasefire at all. Others are calling it a zombie ceasefire. But how do you define a ceasefire where it's not a ceasefire? How do you define a ceasefire where Israel is still killing people in Gaza on a daily basis? They've killed like over 1,000 people since the ceasefire went into effect. They're allowing a tiny number of aid trucks that they actually agreed to within the ceasefire agreement. How is that not a continued genocide? Mediators have warned that the situation is not war, but not peace in a divided Gaza. With regular Israeli attacks and entrenched occupation, no Palestinian self-rule, and limited reconstruction of Palestinian homes and communities. The creation of an international stabilization force, ISF, underpins Trump's 20-point peace plan. The U.S. hopes a draft UN Security Council resolution giving the force a formal mandate will pass early next week. The first step is we have to get the resolution, a U.S. official said. In this plan of this divided Gaza, where Israel and the U.S. steal, quote unquote, take ownership of 58% of Gaza. They're hoping that the UN will approve of that plan. Hypothetically, the kind of bullshit version that they're feeding to some people is, oh, well, we'll take over this 58%, which they already have. I mean, they've already basically ethnically cleansed the entire 58%. We'll take this over. We'll rebuild it into Trump's, Gaza Riviera or whatever the fuck he's calling it. Then we'll let Palestinians back in if they want to come. Or we'll let some in or something. They're trying to sell it as like, oh, we'll rebuild it for Palestine, for Gazans. Bullshit. They are not doing that. And even if Gazans were to come back into that 58% after it's rebuilt, there are some big, big stipulations to that. The U.S. military regional CENTCOM command drew up plans to put European forces, including hundreds of British, French, and German soldiers, at the core of the ISF, International Stabilizing Forces, or whatever they're calling them. Again, here's this chart of rubble across Gaza where it is almost entirely rubble. I think it's like 85% of buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. A U.S. concept of operation for the ISF specifies that troops will serve in the green zone only. The U.S. envisages the deployment starting small in a limited area with a few hundred troops, then expanding slowly to a full strength of 20,000. U.S. military planners also see reconstruction inside the green zone as part of a nebulous path to reuniting Gaza by convincing Palestinian civilians to move across the line of Israeli control. Here's where we get to a key point. They're selling this as, we will rebuild it, we will make it awesome, that 58% that's been ethnically cleansed. We will make it awesome. It's going to be so cool. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be the best. Then we'll invite Gazans to come back into that 58%. Now, here's the thing. First of all, that 58% of Gaza would be completely and fully run and owned by the U.S., Israel, and then have these other national troops walking everywhere. If you're a Gazan and you've survived this genocide and you then are invited back to this area, you are being invited back to an area that is completely and utterly controlled by Israel. Every step you take, every phone call you make, everything you do is monitored. And literally, they've said that that the plan would be to make that 58%, the green zone, an AI smart city. Now, let me ask you, why do you think they would want to make that 58% of Gaza an AI smart city or smart cities? Is it because they just think Gazans are so wonderful that they want to take care of them and give them the best homes that are all smart homes that talk to them, and you can play a Sting song? I'll be watching every time they just yell it into the walls. Walls, play Sting. Is that why? Because they really care about them and they want to give them a smart city, an AI hooked up smart city? Or is it because if they do invite Gazans back into this 58%, they want every fucking inch monitored? Every inch. That's why it would be a smart city. It would be Israeli surveillance amped up to 1,000. That's the reasoning, of course, behind having an AI smart city across the 58% of Gaza that they've ethnically cleansed. The plan to use, back to The Guardian, the plan to use aid to tempt the Gaza population into an area under Israeli control after 2 years of war, deemed genocidal by a UN commission, has echoes of other disastrous U.S. policies from other conflicts. Around a decade before the Taliban took Kabul, the U.S. claimed it was bringing government in a box to southern Helmand province to win over civilians. The province remained an insurgent struggle. The government in a box didn't work out? No. More than a month into the ceasefire, Israel continues to limit aid shipments into Gaza, including barring basic items such as tent poles. Nearly 1.5 million Palestinians are waiting for emergency shelter items, and hundreds of thousands more are living in tents without access to basic services such as clean water. The Guardian, despite this one sentence at the beginning of the article, never spends any more time on the fact that the entirety of the red zone, 42% or whatever, of Gaza, would be left in ruins. Every Gazan is living in ruins. And even if this plan went forward and they actually did it, they actually rebuilt the green zone and then said, you can come back on in now that we have every inch spied on and monitored and it's all controlled by us. Even if that happened, they'd have years of living in rubble where they're not allowed to rebuild anything. Then there's also the fact, to add to this, that it seems that forcing them to live in rubble for this amount of time in that 42% of remaining Gaza is also part of the ethnic cleansing. They will be offered to voluntarily, quote unquote, perhaps move to other countries. And this is an article from Washington Post back in September of this year. A post-war plan for Gaza circulating within the Trump administration, modeled on Trump's vow to take over the enclave, would turn it into a trusteeship administered by the U.S. for at least 10 years, while it is transformed into a gleaming tourism resort and high-tech manufacturing and technology hub. The 38-page prospectus, seen by the Washington Post, envisions at least a temporary relocation of all of Gaza's more than 2 million population. Yeah, just temporary. You'll be able to come back. Just go to Libya just for a minute. Just see how it feels. Yeah, well, you can come back whenever you want. Of course. Just go and it'll be fine. Either through what it calls voluntary departures to another country or into restricted secure zones inside the enclave during reconstruction. I don't think I have to tell you all that the idea of voluntarily being ethnically cleansed, fleeing your homeland because a genocide has been perpetrated there. Every building has been collapsed. There is no clean water. There's barely any food, and your children can't survive. And so you're like, yeah, we'll go somewhere else. That's not voluntarily. Those who own land would be offered a digital token by the trust, in tons of trust here, tons of trust between all sides in this, in exchange for rights to redevelop their property, to be used to finance a new life elsewhere, or eventually redeemed for an apartment in one of 6 to 8 new AI-powered smart cities to be built in Gaza. Each Palestinian who chooses to leave would be given a $5,000 cash payment and subsidies to cover 4 years of rent elsewhere, as well as a year of food. Sorry we killed most of your family. Sorry we killed your parents and your grandparents and your uncles and your aunts and 2 of your children. Here's $5,000 and 1 month's rent in Libya. Are you happy? Is everything good now? Called the Gaza Reconstitution Economic Acceleration and Transformation Trust, or Great Trust. The proposal was developed by some of the same Israelis who created and set in motion the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, which was basically mercenaries murdering Gazans as they tried to get food. Here are the awesome images of what Gaza is going to look like. And hilariously, you can even see out in the water on their little AI images, oil derricks. They're letting you know they'll be stealing the oil. Have no fear. We'll be stealing the oil as this goes. Just in case you were wondering, in case you were concerned we might forget to steal the oil. There's a lot of ins and outs of ethnic cleansing and genocide. It could easily slip our mind to steal all the oil, but we want you to know we got a guy on that. He's not going to forget, okay? We will get that oil, as Trump said about Syria, and he said about Venezuela. Back when he wasn't president, he said, if I'd been back president, we would have gotten all that sweet oil. Oh, it would have been so good.